Hello and welcome to Raven's Arcana. I am Raven. Thank you so much for joining me. And I wanted to continue conversations about some Hermetic principles. We discussed vibration and how vibration and energy work and how that can be understood and used to manage the self and your environment. And I wanted to take a little dip into polarity and how that can be used to understand the self and kind of manage your emotions, your thoughts, and just become a better portion of yourself, right? Or a better representation of yourself. So polarity is best described by using hot and cold, right? So hot and cold, and this is a law of duality, the law of opposites, where hot is at one end of the spectrum and cold is at the other. So they are not different items here. They're not different things, if you will. They exist on the same spectrum. They are the same. They're just different degrees on that spectrum. So if you have hot and you have cold over here, and you have a thermometer needle, it goes this way, goes that way. Then you have hot, cold, warm, cool. And that's what polarity is. It's just explaining that these are not different. These are the same thing, just measured differently on the spectrum, right? Like acceleration, deceleration are the same. It's just measured differently in different degrees. And if we apply that to everyday life, getting into Hermetic principles and applying to thoughts and emotions, usually people describe this as happy or sad, right? Love or hate, where that is the same emotion. It's just measured differently in varying degrees on the spectrum, right? And it's generally accepted that people are manic or bipolar, right? We have polarity, if they can't manage their emotions. So if they go into happy, sad, or that thermometer needle or whatever you're using as a reference in your mind, as a metaphor for those degrees, just being manic, meaning it's all over the place, you would be bipolar because you cannot manage your spectrum. You cannot try to maintain either your center of the spectrum or your emotions are not appropriate for certain actions, for certain events. Your reaction is extremely inappropriate, or what is perceived as inappropriate by the whole, right? By the standards that we've set as society, which is not, we won't go into that, but yeah. Now, polarity cannot be viewed by itself as a form of managing, right? And we see this mistake made through like pharmaceuticals, for example. So if you have someone that's been diagnosed as manic depression, right, or bipolar, they are not taking into consideration cause and effect. So something is causing this, whether it be a chemical imbalance or an event that triggers this manic behavior. So we have pharmaceuticals that will 100% address the emotion. And if you have someone that, goes to happy, sad, all over the place, inappropriate emotion for the event or for the cause, we are treating that. We are just trying to manage that emotion without thinking about cause and effect, right? And we do this as well when we see people that are upset. We talked about vibration, we try to match or have them match our vibration. If we are happy and they are sad, we try to bring our energy in and we try to bring them back at least to center, right? At least to calm and try to pull them over a little bit to the other side of that spectrum to happy, right? And that's not treating the cause either. That's a temporary solution. And pharmaceuticals are generally temporary solutions. We're not treating the cause. And that is a downfall when you understand how polarity works, that you're not taking into consideration cause and effect. We also don't take into consideration that I've been explaining to you the whole time that polarity is on a spectrum and it's linear, which is not true. So the way energy and vibration worked, we talked about radiating out. We talked about spiraling, right? There's a center point, and that energy radiates out. So the same thing would happen if we are all energy, and it's all about energy exchange. Our thoughts, our emotions. If I have happiness or sadness, that comes from a center point, and it's radiating out. If we have somebody that's diagnosed as bipolar and unable to manage what we consider their spectrum, right? We don't need to look at it on a linear platform. We need to look at it as radiating out. So there's circles within circles. And there's multiple emotions stacked upon that, right? So it's not just, you're not just happy or sad and that's who you are and that's it. There's love and hate. There's other aspects of thoughts and emotions entangled in all of this, right? And the reason that a lot of people are unable to correctly diagnose manic behavior or bipolar disorder or things like that is because they're looking at that spectrum as being linear. And the reason why it's so easy for people that have the ability to access the complete range of emotion and thought, they're not, that needle's not necessarily going hot, cold, happy, sad, love, hate, because if it's a spiral or if it's radiating out, then you're grabbing bands, right? So if you have this radiating out from you, this energy, it's always going to be a spiral or a circle, right? That's how energy works. So we're not necessarily talking about that needle moving quickly. We're talking about the ability to, if you're spiraling out, right, or spiraling down when somebody's just, it's going bad for you emotionally, right? The reason why, if you don't have control of your emotions, you could be laughing and crying is because you're grabbing those inner bands, if you will, that spiral. So if it's, happiness, sadness, and everything's moving in a circle, rotating, coming out from you, that's what people don't think about. That shock wave, with the circles and inside the circles, you might be able to grasp onto some happiness here and there as you're rotating out, rotating down, rotating up. This is the reason why if you're extremely happy and a song makes you happy, you might cry because you're so happy that tears of joy come out. And that would be diagnosed through the medical industry as, that's manic behavior. Well, it's not, because you have the ability, because you're not on a linear measuring point. It's all about the circles and the spirals and the radiation out. I wanted to go into another thing here as well. So people that have the ability to go manic, to be bipolar, to experience extreme happiness and extreme sadness, they have the ability, and I was going to say opportunity, it is an opportunity to experience the full range of emotion, which is what it's all about. And now we are prescribing, pharmaceuticals. We are teaching people as a society that these outer limits, these extremities, are not necessarily the correct way to behave, which is inaccurate. Now, we definitely need to be able to manage our behavior in certain situations at work, places you don't want to be laughing like crazy at a funeral, obviously. But your ability to access the full range of emotion is required to experience this life, this existence, whatever we're doing here, to the fullest extent. Through engineering, training, schooling, pharmaceuticals, being diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, all these things, bipolar, manic. We have things that are regulating our polarities, and it's not allowing us to experience that full range. or that full range. And that's not good. That's not a good thing. And most people exist. And I know I went from the spectrum being linear and explaining it as a spiral or as a radiative circle coming out, which is what it is. It's just easier visually to explain that most of us as a whole, as humanity, I think, only experience a certain portion of the spectrum. And that's through that programming, conditioning, schooling, pharmaceuticals. It's not a good thing. So when you regulate, you're only staying in here. You're not really able to be extremely happy. You don't feel that adrenaline rush, right? Or you don't feel the way you're supposed to. You don't address your emotions correctly because you don't feel that super depression, the pain, loss of a loved one or a friend. And that's important to do that, because when you have that and you feel that extreme emotion on the downside, you remember that. You address it because you feel it so deeply. And you address those feelings. You address those thoughts and you process it correctly so you can move on. So you can actually have a moment of pure happiness if you process those emotions, take a hike, and you're at the top of a peak looking down at nature and the world and look at how magnificent we all are and this place is. You have to be able to process all that, and you do have to be able to manage everything. But we don't need to do it, and we need to address things as cause and effect as well. So we need to be able to go in and not just put Band-Aids on things. While, hugs and handshakes and everything's going to be okay is necessary as a short-term solution, we always have to look at the cause and effect as well. We have to address that. We have to see what's causing this emotion, what's causing these thoughts, and address that, and not put a Band-Aid on it, a blanket on it every time with pharmaceuticals, or even with it's going to be okay and you just suppress it. You need to dive down or reach up and figure out what is causing this. Right? I felt like this was a rambling kind of all over the place, but just want to talk about polarity and how it's kind of misunderstood, the way it works, the way it radiates, spirals up and down, and about the spectrum and where most people exist. And once you understand this, you understand how your thoughts and emotions work, how to manage them, how to help others manage their thoughts of emotions, and not to just put blankets or Band-Aids on everything. And we address everything holistically. And that's what Hermetics is all about. All right, so thank you so much for sticking around on this weird ride. Felt like it was a little bit all over the place, and I do apologize. But appreciate your time as always, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. All right, take care.